"She's just a simple accountant," my sister-in-law boasted in front of everyone. The man ate the door, smiled, and said, "Simple. She's the federal auditor coming to investigate your company tomorrow." And when I revealed my badge, imagine this, the person who's relentlessly belittled your career for years, making you feel small, suddenly finds herself facing a catastrophic downfall. And you? You're the one holding the keys. Because that's exactly what happened when a federal investigator arrived at my sister-in-law Regina's mansion, mid-dinner, mid-mockery, about my simple accountant job. You won't believe what happened next. My name's Allison, and for as long as I can remember, Regina, my husband Marcus's sister, has made my life a special kind of hell. Every family gathering, every holiday, it was a competition for her. And I was always losing. You see, I'm an IRS accountant. A senior investigative accountant, actually. But to Regina, with her sprawling real estate development empire and her 8-figure company, I was just a simple accountant. A government drone. Someone to be mocked. Tonight, at her annual family dinner in their ridiculously opulent mansion, was supposed to be different. I was still riding high from a recent promotion, and I'd just been assigned lead on a massive tax fraud investigation, a real game changer for my career. I felt like I finally had something to hold my head high about. What I didn't know, couldn't possibly have known, was that this major company I was about to investigate belonged to Regina. My relationship with Regina? Oh, it's been a mess since I married Marcus 5 years ago. My husband, Marcus, he's wonderful, kind, smart, supportive in almost every way. But when it came to his sister, he'd shrink. He'd just disappear into himself. I can't even count the number of times I watched him go silent while Regina tore into my career, my clothes, even our perfectly lovely 3-bedroom house that we're actually incredibly proud of. Regina lived to flaunt her success. Her real estate company, Crown Heights Properties, pulled in 8 figures last year. She'd remind everyone. She and Timothy, my brother-in-law, lived in this ridiculously huge 6-bedroom mansion, drove matching luxury SUVs, and vacationed in places you only see in glossy magazines. Our comfortable, middle-class life was the complete opposite of their lavish existence. And honestly, I wasn't ashamed of my career. I'd worked my butt off for my CPA, specialized in forensic accounting because I genuinely believe in financial integrity. That promotion a few months ago? Senior investigative accountant at the IRS. It was a big deal. More responsibility, a decent pay bump. Marcus and I celebrated with a nice dinner and a bottle of wine we'd been saving for a special occasion. The most infuriating thing about Regina's condescension was how little she actually knew about my job. I investigate complex financial crimes. I help bring tax evaders to justice. It's hard, important work, demanding serious expertise. But I've always kept my cases private, a strict firewall between my professional life and my personal one. It was necessary. Then, 2 weeks before that dinner, my boss, Gerald, called me into his office. There was an urgency in his voice I hadn't heard before. He slid a thick folder across his desk. "Allison, your lead on the Crown Heights investigation," he said. "Preliminary work suggests serious discrepancies. We could be looking at deliberate tax evasion in the millions." I felt this electric surge of excitement. This was it. The high-profile case that could cement my reputation. I dove in, spending days poring over reports, bank statements, property transfers, building a forensic picture of the company's finances for the last 5 years. "This has to be airtight," Gerald warned me. "Crown Heights has connections. They'll fight back hard." I practically lived and breathed that case. Late nights, detailed spreadsheets, complex analysis. Marcus was amazing, bringing me dinner in my home office, giving me space. "This could be a game changer for your career," he'd say, massaging my tense shoulders. "I'm proud of you." The formal on-site investigation at Crown Heights headquarters was set for the following Tuesday. As the Tuesday approached, I was a coiled spring of anxiety and determination. This case could genuinely define my professional reputation. Then Marcus reminded me, Regina's annual family dinner was that weekend. I almost canceled. The timing was terrible. I needed every minute to prep. But Marcus pleaded. "She's still my sister, it's tradition." Just a few hours, then you can work. I sighed, gave in. I actually hoped that, for once, we might have a pleasant evening. Maybe the weight of my serious case would give me a thicker skin against her usual digs. What I didn't know, what I couldn't have possibly imagined, was that Crown Heights Properties, the company I had been pouring my heart and soul into investigating for weeks, was Regina's company. That realization? It was about to turn a routine family dinner into the most explosively complicated night of my entire life, both professionally and personally. The drive to their house was tense. Marcus kept looking at me while I just stared out the window, mentally prepping for Regina's inevitable attacks. I promise I'll say something if she gets out of line tonight, Marcus said, reaching for my hand. I squeezed his fingers, but I didn't say anything. I'd heard that promise countless times before. Their mansion, this sprawling Tudor-style behemoth, loomed at the end of its curved driveway. Perfectly manicured lawns, a fountain in the circular drive. 2 other luxury cars were already parked next to Regina's Range Rover and Timothy's Mercedes. Deep breaths, Marcus whispered as we approached the impossibly large front door. It's just dinner. Regina flung the door open, wearing a designer dress that probably cost more than our monthly mortgage. There you are, she trilled, air-kissing Marcus, then giving me a quick, dismissive hug. Everyone's already here. Come in, come in. The foyer opened into a 2-story great room, already buzzing with about 8 family members. I saw Marcus's cousins, his uncle, Timothy's parents. And then I saw her, Stephanie, Regina's business partner, elegant in a black cocktail dress, red hair swept up. She looked reserved. Let me get you both a drink, Regina announced, pulling us towards a bar cart overflowing with top-shelf liquor. Then I simply must show you the renovations. We just finished the East Wing. For 20 agonizing minutes, Regina paraded us through room after room, pointing out custom fixtures and furniture with price tags that made my stomach clench. Marcus just nodded politely, but I was trailing behind, my mind already calculating how much of this extravagance was actually being reported on their tax returns. As we neared what Regina proudly called her home office suite, Timothy suddenly burst out, closing the door behind him a little too quickly. He looked utterly startled to see us. Oh, no need to go in there, he stammered. It's a mess with all Regina's work papers. But through the brief crack, I saw Stephanie, huddled over a large desk, frantically gathering documents. Alarm bells. Professional ones. They went off instantly. What kind of work do you bring home? I asked casually. Regina just waved a dismissive hand. Oh, darling, just some property. Assessments, investment projections. Nothing that would interest you. But as we walked away, a hushed voice drifted from the office. Stephanie's. We need to fix these books before anyone sees them. The timing couldn't be worse. My heart started to pound. No company name was mentioned, but a terrifying suspicion was blooming in my mind. Crown Heights Properties. It was a huge real estate firm. Could it be Regina's? During cocktail hour, Regina was holding court by the fireplace, practically preening as she described her latest luxury condo project. We've pre-sold 60% of the units already, she boasted, at an average of $1.2 million each. Everyone murmured their appreciation. Timothy's father, Walter, raised his glass. Always knew you had the Midas touch, Regina. And Regina, with a smug wink, replied, it's all about relationships, Walter, and knowing when to bend the rules. I nearly choked on my drink. Bending rules? In my world, that was code for tax evasion. Financial fraud. I looked at Marcus, deep in conversation across the room, completely oblivious to the cold dread settling in my gut. Then Stephanie sidled up to me, her social smile stretched thin. Her eyes were tense. So, Allison, Regina tells me you work for the government, she asked, trying to sound nonchalant. That's right, I said, carefully. I'm an accountant with the IRS. A flicker of pure anxiety, pure fear, crossed her face before she got it under control. How fascinating. I imagine that must be very structured work. It has its moments, I replied, watching her like a hawk. Especially when we're investigating major cases. Stephanie's knuckles turned white around her glass. Major cases? How interesting. What sort of criteria would trigger something like that? Before I could even answer, Regina swept in, linking arms with Stephanie. Are you boring poor Allison with business talk? Come, dinner's ready to be served. As we headed to the dining room, I saw Timothy give Stephanie a questioning look. She responded with a subtle, warning shake of her head. The knot in my stomach tightened. Something was absolutely, unequivocally wrong. The dining table was a ridiculous display of Regina's wealth: fine china, sparkling crystal, silver candelabras, elaborate floral arrangements. My place card was between Marcus and his uncle Franklin, directly across from Regina and Timothy. Stephanie was at the far end, now looking openly tense. Through the appetizer course, I tried to focus on the trivial chatter around me, but my brain was on fire. All those snippets I'd overheard, the furtive glances, the hushed words. If Regina's company was Crown Heights Properties, I was literally sitting across from the subject of my massive investigation, eating roasted beet salad, pretending everything was normal. The absurdity was dizzying. I excused myself, needing a moment to just breathe. In the hallway, I took a wrong turn and found myself near that home office I'd glimpsed earlier. The door was slightly ajar. My professional instincts, sharpened by years of forensic accounting, screamed. I glanced around. Alone. I pushed the door open. Stepped inside. The large desk was mostly cleared, but there was a folder, carelessly left behind, almost hidden in a hasty cleanup. The label on the tab read, Crown Heights Properties Tax Planning 2024 to 2025. Boom. My suspicion confirmed. A cold wave of horrifying realization washed over me. It was her. Tomorrow, I would be leading an investigation into my own sister-in-law's company. I walked back to the dining room just as the catering staff served the main course: perfectly cooked beef tenderloin, truffle mashed potatoes, asparagus. Timothy announced we were drinking a $300 bottle of Cabernet from their Napa Valley trip. My appetite had vanished completely. I just pushed food around my plate, sipping water, trying to appear normal while my mind reeled with the implications. Walter, Timothy's father, called out from the end of the table, Allison, Marcus tells me you got a promotion. Congratulations. Before I could even respond, Regina cut him off. Yes, moving up in the world of government work. From what cubicle to which cubicle was it again? A few uncomfortable chuckles rippled around the table. Marcus frowned, but he stayed silent. Actually, I replied, my voice steady despite the heat rising in my cheeks. I was promoted to senior investigative accountant. It involves leading major financial investigations. Timothy's mother, Patricia, leaned forward, genuinely interested. That sounds quite impressive. What sort of investigations do you handle? I opened my mouth to give a general answer, but Regina let out a loud, theatrical laugh. Oh, Mother Timothy, don't encourage her. It's all just pushing papers and checking math on tax returns. She turned to the entire table, wine glass in hand. The room seemed to shrink. Let me tell you about Allison's exciting life. Her voice took on that sickeningly mocking tone. She's just a simple accountant, folks. Gets up every morning, puts on her sensible shoes and her government-approved blazer, drives her economic car to her little cubicle, and spends 8 hours making sure ordinary people haven't claimed too many deductions. She gestured dramatically. While some of us are closing multi-million-dollar deals and creating actual value in the economy, Allison is making sure some poor teacher didn't write off too many classroom supplies. She raised her glass. To the exciting life of government work. The table erupted in laughter. Even Marcus, after a brief pause, chuckled along, then shot me an apologetic look that did nothing to quell the burning humiliation. Regina, Timothy said weakly. Perhaps that's enough. Oh, please, she scoffed, waving away his concern. She knows I'm just having fun. Allison understands not everyone can be a business success. Someone has to do the boring jobs, right, Allison? I sat there frozen. My hands clenched under the table. Memories flooded back. Regina at our wedding reception, wondering if we could afford a honeymoon on government cheese. Regina at Thanksgiving, suggesting my practical gifts for her kids showed typical government worker thriftiness. Every single family gathering. Her mission diminished me. Actually, I finally managed to say, my voice embarrassingly small, my work is quite complex. And it's important for ensuring our tax system functions fairly. Of course it is, sweetie, Regina replied, using a tone you'd reserve for a toddler. We're all so impressed with your adding and subtracting. More laughter. I glanced at Marcus, silently pleading for support. He was just intently studying his plate, a weak smile fixed on his face. Excuse me, I murmured, standing so fast my chair nearly toppled. I need some air. I hurried out, bypassed the powder room, and made a beeline for the guest bathroom at the far end of the hall. Privacy. I locked the door, leaned against the marble sink, and finally, let the tears come. Hot. Humiliating. The bathroom itself was absurdly luxurious. More marble, gold fixtures. Even here, I couldn't escape her dominance. As I dabbed at my eyes with a monogrammed hand towel, something behind a decorative vase caught my attention. A stack of papers, hastily shoved there, almost hidden in a hasty cleanup. The top page had the Crown Heights Properties logo. Financial projections. With trembling hands, I lifted them. These weren't just any financial documents. These were internal projections showing significantly higher revenue figures than what I'd seen in their preliminary tax filings at work. One page detailed what could only be a dual bookkeeping system, with columns labeled reported and actual. This was it. Concrete evidence of the exact fraud I was tasked with investigating. And it had fallen right into my lap. In my sister-in-law's guest bathroom. On the eve of my formal investigation. My tears dried instantly, replaced by a cold, professional focus. This was no longer about Regina's cruelty or my hurt feelings. This was about potential criminal activity. I quickly took photos of several key pages with my phone, then carefully replaced them, exactly as I'd found them. When I returned to the table, dessert was wrapping up. Regina was now launching into veiled comments about government inefficiency. The problem with bureaucrats, she was saying, is they have no understanding of how business actually works. They just blindly follow regulations created by other bureaucrats. Marcus caught my eye, and for the first time all night, he actually seemed to grasp how utterly inappropriate his sister's behavior was. Regina, he said, his voice firm, that's enough. Allison's work is important and challenging. Oh, please. Regina laughed dismissively. She pushes papers all day. Those who can, do. Those who can't, work for the government. More uncomfortable laughter rippled around the table, but it was thinner now, forced. Actually, Marcus continued, his voice gaining strength, Allison recently received a major promotion. She leads complex financial investigations. How fascinating, Regina purred, her tone oozing disdain. I'm sure checking math on tax returns requires tremendous skill. Stephanie, who'd been looking increasingly agitated, abruptly stood. I need some air. Excuse me. She hurried from the room, her face ashen. Timothy watched her go with concern, then turned to Regina. Perhaps we should move to the living room for coffee? Regina ignored him, her attention fixed on me again. Tell us, Allison, what's the most exciting thing that's happened in your career lately? Did someone file a Form 1040 instead of a 1040 easy? The table fell uncomfortably silent. I met her gaze steadily. My professional demeanor, my federal face, as we called it, slid into place despite the personal attack. Actually, Regina, I said, my voice clear and calm, I've recently been assigned as lead investigator on a major tax fraud case. The company in question has apparently been maintaining 2 sets of books and misrepresenting millions in revenue. Regina's smile faltered. How terribly boring for you. Ding dong. The doorbell rang, its chime echoing through the suddenly absolute silence of the dining room. Who could that be? Timothy wondered aloud, half rising. I'll get it, Regina said, clearly eager to escape the tension she'd created. It's probably Caroline from next door, borrowing sugar again. As Regina left the room, Marcus leaned close to me. I'm so sorry about all this, he whispered. She's being worse than usual tonight. I just nodded, my attention fixed on the hallway. Voices. One was Regina's, her tone instantly shifting to the syrupy sweet one she reserved for people she wanted to impress. The other? A deeper voice. I recognized it. Leonard Bennett, my colleague from the Financial Crimes Division. Good evening, sir. How can I help you? Regina's voice carried down the hall. Good evening, ma'am, Leonard's professional baritone replied. I'm looking for Allison Wright. I was told she's here for a family dinner. The dining room fell completely silent. Everyone strained to hear. I sat there, frozen, knowing exactly what was about to unfold, but powerless to stop it. Allison. Regina's voice took on a dismissive edge. What business do you have with her? I have urgent documents she needs to review before tomorrow morning, Leonard explained. It's regarding a federal investigation. I could picture Regina's patronizing smile. The one she always wore when discussing my career. Timothy half rose from his seat, his face a mask of concern. She's just a simple accountant, Regina's voice rang out, perfectly audible to everyone at the table. Whatever government paperwork you have can surely wait until Monday. There was a pause. A pregnant, terrifying pause. And I knew, without seeing, that Leonard would be standing straighter, his expression shifting to what we called his federal face. Simple. Leonard's voice was calm, but it carried a weight of authority that silenced the room completely. She's the federal auditor scheduled to investigate your company tomorrow. And based on our preliminary findings, Mrs. Blackwell, you should be very concerned. The silence that followed was absolute. I could hear the frantic ticking of the ornate grandfather clock in the hallway. A soft gasp from Stephanie at the end of the table. Regina appeared in the dining room doorway, her face utterly drained of color. Leonard stood just behind her, a leather portfolio tucked under his arm. Her eyes found mine, widening with a mixture of shock, confusion, and then the first flickers of pure, unadulterated fear. What is he talking about, Allison? Her voice had lost all its usual confident edge. It was barely a whisper. I stood slowly, smoothing my napkin on the table. Leonard, I said, I didn't expect you here tonight. I thought we were meeting tomorrow. Leonard stepped past the still frozen Regina. Gerald thought you should see these tonight, Allison. The situation has escalated. He handed me the portfolio, his expression grave. We've received additional documentation from a whistleblower at Crown Heights. It confirms our suspicions. The investigation has been upgraded to include potential money laundering. Money laundering. Timothy knocked over his wine glass, red liquid spreading like blood across the pristine white tablecloth. Money laundering. Regina? What the hell is going on? Stephanie suddenly stood, wobbling. Her face was green. I need to. I don't feel well. She rushed from the room, hand clapped over her mouth. Regina stood in the doorway, her usual poise utterly shattered. This is ridiculous. There must be some mistake. She turned to me, her expression hardening. Is this some kind of twisted revenge, Allison, for a few harmless jokes? The accusation stung. But I maintained my professional composure. This investigation has been ongoing for months, Regina. I only realized tonight that Crown Heights was your company. I opened the portfolio, scanning the documents. And based on what I'm seeing here, and what I accidentally discovered in your guest bathroom, the concerns appear to be valid. You went through my personal papers? Regina's voice rose to a shriek. They were left out in plain sight, I replied calmly. And as a federal agent with reasonable suspicion of tax fraud, I had both the right and the obligation to note their contents. Marcus stood beside me, his face a mask of confusion. Allison, what's happening? Are you really investigating Regina's company? I was assigned the case 2 weeks ago, I explained. I had no idea it was Regina's until tonight. Timothy approached his wife, his face ashen. Regina, tell me this isn't true. Tell me you haven't been cooking the books. Regina's shock quickly morphed into calculated damage control. It's all a misunderstanding, she insisted, her voice trying to steady. Our accounting is complex, but completely legal. Franklin handles all the details. Franklin Mercer? Leonard asked sharply. We've already interviewed Mr. Mercer this afternoon. He's been quite forthcoming about the creative accounting he was instructed to implement. Regina's composure crumbled. He wouldn't dare. I paid him well to ensure everything was properly managed. To commit fraud on your behalf, I corrected quietly, still reviewing the damning documents Leonard had brought, Bank statements showing deposits that never appeared in tax filings, property transfers between shell companies to hide assets, emails from Regina explicitly instructing Franklin to make the numbers work, regardless of reality. The family members watched in stunned silence. Judith whispered frantically to Gabriel. Patricia held her hand to her mouth in shock. Walter, Timothy's father, looked thunderous, his earlier pride in Regina replaced by pure anger. I think, he said slowly, we should all calm down and discuss this privately. The rest of you should probably leave. This appears to be a sensitive matter. Judith and Gabriel needed no further encouragement, practically fleeing. Patricia and Walter lingered, clearly concerned for Timothy, but he tersely suggested they head home. I'll call you tomorrow, he promised, not meeting their eyes. As the other guests scrambled out, Timothy rounded on Regina. Tell me exactly what you've done now. Regina's eyes darted between Timothy, Leonard, and me. Then with a sudden, chilling shift in demeanor, she let out a brittle laugh and approached me, lowering her voice. Allison, be reasonable. We're family. Surely there's some arrangement we can come to. Her hand touched my arm. I've always admired your integrity. Perhaps you could use your position to guide us through this little misunderstanding. Leonard stepped forward, his voice like ice. Mrs. Blackwell, are you attempting to influence a federal investigation? Because I should warn you, that would constitute an additional felony. Regina snatched her hand back as if burned. Of course not. I'm simply asking my sister-in-law for professional advice. I need to recuse myself from this case immediately, I said, addressing Leonard, stepping away from Regina. The personal connection creates a conflict of interest. Agreed, Leonard nodded. But the investigation will proceed as scheduled. I'll need your preliminary notes and observations now. Just then, Stephanie reappeared, her face streaked with tears. I contacted Franklin, she choked out. He told them everything. About the offshore accounts, the false invoices, all of it. Timothy sank into a chair, burying his head in his hands. What have you done? Regina's carefully maintained facade finally shattered. What I had to do, she shrieked, gesturing wildly around her lavish home. Do you think all this comes easy? The market was crashing. We were going to lose everything. I made decisions to protect us. To protect our lifestyle. By breaking the law? Timothy said flatly. By risking prison? Marcus, who had watched the entire scene unfold in stunned, utter silence, finally found his voice. Allison, did you know about this before tonight? No, I said honestly. I knew I was investigating Crown Heights properties, but I never connected it to Regina. She's never mentioned her company name before. Regina laughed bitterly. Of course not. Why would I discuss business with a simple accountant? The cruel joke that had humiliated me earlier now echoed back with devastating, ironic weight. The simple accountant had just uncovered millions in tax fraud, and Regina's carefully constructed world was crumbling around her. Leonard cleared his throat, breaking the tense silence. Mrs. Wright, I need to speak with you privately about your recusal and the transition of the case. I nodded, following him to a corner while Regina hissed urgent instructions to Stephanie, who was frantically texting someone. Given the circumstances, you'll need to formally recuse yourself first thing tomorrow, Leonard explained quietly. All evidence you've observed tonight, including those documents you photographed, will need to be properly logged through official channels. I understand completely, I assured him. I'll prepare a full report tonight and submit everything through the proper protocols. Across the room, Regina's desperate damage control continued. Call Samuel, she urged Timothy. He'll know which judge to contact. We can get an injunction. Delay the investigation until we can fix this. Timothy stared at his wife as if seeing her for the first time. Fix this, Regina? They have evidence. They have Franklin's testimony. There's nothing to fix. There's always something to fix if you throw enough money at it. Regina snapped, her voice rising. Allison, come here. I rejoined the group, maintaining a professional distance. Regina's eyes were calculating, even through her panic. How much would it take? She asked bluntly. Excuse me. Don't play naive, she hissed. How much would it take to make this go away? Name your price. She reached for her purse. I can write a check right now. Leonard stepped forward instantly. Mrs. Blackwell, I need to warn you that you are now attempting to bribe a federal officer. That's a serious crime on top of the charges already being considered. Regina ignored him, her gaze fixed on me. We're family, Allison. After everything I've done for you and Marcus, everything you've done. Marcus interjected, incredulous. Regina, all you've ever done is belittle Allison and treat her like she's beneath you. I gave you a job when you needed one. Regina shot back. I loaned you money for your down payment, which we repaid in full, with interest, Marcus countered, his voice steady now. And I worked hard for that salary. I placed a restraining hand on Marcus's arm. This isn't helping the situation. To Regina, I said firmly, I cannot and will not interfere with a federal investigation. The evidence will be processed according to law. My professional ethics don't allow for any other outcome. Ethics? Regina spat the word like it was poison. Ethics don't buy vacation homes or designer clothes or respect. No, I agreed quietly. But they let me sleep at night. Stephanie, who had been pacing nervously by the window, suddenly broke down completely. I can't do this anymore. I can't. She turned to Timothy, tears streaming. I tried to stop her. I told her the offshore accounts were too risky, that the shell companies were too obvious, but she and Franklin just kept pushing forward. You knew about this? Timothy asked, his voice hollow. Stephanie nodded miserably. Not everything, not at first, but enough. I convinced myself it was just aggressive tax planning, not actual fraud. But then documents started disappearing, and Franklin started talking about creative solutions, and suddenly we were falsifying invoices and backdating contracts. Regina's face contorted with rage. Shut up, Stephanie. Not another word. But Stephanie couldn't stop, the words pouring out now. The Tokyo investors Regina bragged about? They don't exist. We've been shifting money between accounts to make it look like new investment. The Westlake project is underwater. The Clayton Heights development is built on land we don't fully own. And the tax documents for the past 3 years have all been falsified. Regina lunged at Stephanie, but Timothy caught her arm. Stop it. You've done enough damage. Leonard had been quietly taking notes throughout this entire exchange. Miss Stephanie Keller, is it? He said, his voice calm but authoritative. I believe we'll need to continue this conversation formally tomorrow. Your cooperation could be significant in determining charges. Marcus put his arm around my shoulders. I think we need to leave now, Allison. I nodded, gathering my purse and the portfolio Leonard had brought. I'll need to contact Gerald immediately and formally recuse myself from this investigation. As we prepared to leave, Regina made one last desperate attempt. Allison, please. We can work something out. I'll never say another word about your job. I'll respect your career choices. Just help me make this go away. I looked at the woman who had belittled me for years, now reduced to begging for the help of this simple accountant she'd mocked just hours earlier. I can't do that, Regina. My voice was firm. The investigation will proceed, but with another lead agent. In the car, the silence was deafening. Marcus gripped the steering wheel, his knuckles white. I had no idea, he finally said, his voice hollow. About any of it. Regina's fraud, your investigation, none of it. I know, I assured him. I didn't make the connection myself until tonight. All these years, he continued, she's been looking down on you, acting superior, when she was actually a criminal. And I never stood up to her. Not really. I placed my hand on his arm. Tonight you did. Too little, too late. He shook his head in disgust. I should have shut her down years ago. The first time she made one of her snide comments. We drove in silence for several more minutes before Marcus spoke again. What happens now with Regina? I'll recuse myself immediately, I explained. The case will be reassigned, probably to Monica, who has similar experience. The investigation will proceed based on the evidence. If the fraud is as extensive as it appears, Regina and possibly Stephanie will face serious charges. And Franklin, the accountant, is already cooperating, which usually means a plea deal with reduced charges for him. When we finally got home, I immediately called Gerald and explained everything. He agreed with my recusal and arranged for Monica to take over. I sent him the photos I'd taken of the documents in Regina's bathroom and promised a full written report by morning. After hanging up, I sank onto our living room couch, the events of the evening crashing over me. "What a night," I murmured. Marcus brought me a glass of wine and sat beside me. "I'm sorry," he said simply. "For all of it. For not standing up to Regina all these years. For letting her treat you that way." "It's not entirely your fault," I replied, though a part of me had always resented his passive acceptance of his sister's behavior. "Yes, it is," he insisted. "She's my sister." Which made it my responsibility to set boundaries. "I failed you there." I leaned against his shoulder, too emotionally exhausted to argue. "What do you think will happen to them?" I asked. Marcus sighed deeply. "Based on what Stephanie revealed, prison time seems likely. At a minimum, they'll lose the business, probably most of their assets." The thought brought me no satisfaction, only a complicated mix of professional vindication and a profound sadness for the family chaos that was about to erupt. "I never wanted this," I said softly. "I never wanted to be the one to bring down your sister." "You didn't," Marcus replied firmly. "Regina brought herself down. You were just doing your job. The important, complex job she spent years mocking." The irony wasn't lost on either of us. This simple accountant had discovered that Regina's entire world of wealth and success had been built on a foundation of lies, fraud, and criminal activity. Monday morning arrived with a surreal, almost dreamlike quality. While my colleagues buzzed with excitement about the Crown Heights investigation, I sat in Gerald's office, formally signing the recusal documents. "You handled this with remarkable professionalism," Allison, Gerald said, reviewing my detailed report. "Lesser agents might have been tempted to use their position inappropriately, given the personal connection." "Never crossed my mind," I replied honestly. "The integrity of the investigation is paramount." Gerald nodded, approvingly. "Monica's been assigned as lead. She's fully briefed on all aspects of the case, including the unusual circumstances of discovery." Monica was waiting outside Gerald's office, her expression genuinely sympathetic. "Quite a family dinner you had," she commented as we walked toward the conference room. "One for the record books." I just nodded. Over the following weeks, the case against Crown Heights Properties unfolded with devastating thoroughness. Franklin Mercer, Regina's accountant, provided prosecutors with years of documentation, systematic tax evasion, falsified records, and illegal property transactions. In exchange for his cooperation, he got a reduced sentence of 2 years. Stephanie Keller also cooperated, admitting she'd objected to many of Regina's schemes, but had gone along out of loyalty and fear. She faced lesser charges, but still significant financial penalties. The family fallout? Exactly as severe as I'd expected. Timothy filed for separation, his reputation in the business community irrevocably tarnished by association. Regina was indicted on 17 counts of tax fraud, money laundering, and obstruction of justice. Crown Heights Properties was put into receivership, its assets frozen. Marcus struggled. Public humiliation. Conflicted feelings about his sister. But to my utter surprise, he finally found his voice. When Regina called, demanding he convince me to somehow intervene, he firmly refused. "You did this to yourself, Regina," I overheard him saying on the phone. "Allison is one of the most ethical people I know, and the way you've treated her over the years was inexcusable. Even now, you're not sorry for what you did, only that you got caught." After he hung up, he looked both drained and somehow lighter. "That felt long overdue," he admitted. At work, my handling of the Crown Heights situation earned me significant respect. A month after the investigation went public, Gerald called me into his office. "The director was very impressed by your ethical handling of the Crown Heights case," he informed me. "There's an opening for division supervisor in the Special Investigations Unit. I've recommended you for the position." The promotion came with a substantial salary increase and leadership of a specialized team focusing on complex financial crimes. The irony was not lost on me. Regina's mockery of my simple accounting job had inadvertently led to a career advancement that put me in charge of investigations even more significant than hers. The most unexpected development came 6 months later. Timothy reached out to Marcus, suggesting a family Thanksgiving dinner. The first since the incident, as everyone now called it. Regina won't be there, Timothy explained when we arrived at what was once his and Regina's mansion, now significantly smaller after asset seizures. She was still awaiting trial, staying with her parents. Dinner was awkward at first. Patricia and Walter, Timothy's parents, were clearly uncomfortable around me. But as the evening wore on, Timothy made a point of asking about my work, showing genuine interest in my recent promotion. "I owe you an apology," he said quietly, helping me clear plates. "I sat through years of Regina belittling you, and I never said a word." "You weren't the only one," I replied, glancing at Marcus. Still, I knew some of what was happening with the company, not all of it, but enough that I should have asked questions. He shook his head. I chose to look the other way because I enjoyed the lifestyle. In a sense, I'm as guilty as she is. His honesty was unexpected, and I appreciated it. "What will you do now?" I asked. "Start over," he said simply. "With a legitimate business and a much smaller house." 2 weeks after Thanksgiving, I received a letter. From Regina. I almost didn't open it, expecting more accusations or pleas. Instead, I found something truly unexpected, what appeared to be a genuine apology. "I've had a lot of time to think," she wrote. "My actions weren't just illegal. They were a betrayal of the values our parents taught us. Worst of all was how I treated you. My mockery came from my own insecurity. Deep down, I envied your integrity, the respect you earned through honest work rather than wealth and showing off. I don't expect forgiveness, but I wanted you to know that I understand now what true success looks like. It looks like you." I shared the letter with Marcus, who read it with raised eyebrows. "Do you think she means it?" he asked. "I'm not sure," I admitted, "but it's a start." The following spring, I was invited to speak to a class of accounting students at the local university about ethics and financial investigation. Looking out at those eager faces, I shared the most important lesson from my experience. Technical skills matter in this profession, I told them, but integrity matters more. There will be moments in your career when doing the right thing is difficult. When personal connections conflict with professional responsibilities. In those moments, remember that your reputation and self-respect are worth more than any short-term advantage. Back in my office, now a much larger space than the cubicle Regina had once mocked, I found a notice. Regina's case had been resolved through a plea agreement. 3 years in federal prison, followed by 5 years of supervised release, and over $12 million in restitution for back taxes and penalties. I felt no satisfaction at the news, only a complicated sadness for the family trauma her actions had caused. But I also felt something I hadn't expected, a deep sense of pride. Pride in my role, in upholding the financial integrity that keeps our entire system functioning. That evening, Marcus and I celebrated my promotion with a dinner that, while not extravagant by Regina's standards, was absolutely perfect for us. I reflected on how differently I now viewed that simple accountant joke that had once humiliated me so deeply. "You know," I told Marcus, raising my glass, "being a simple accountant who believes in doing things right, turns out it's a pretty good way to live." He clinked his glass against mine. "To the not-so-simple accountant who taught us all about integrity," he said, his eyes full of love. "This whole experience really taught me the value of standing your ground and staying true to your principles." I hope my story resonates with some of you out there. Have you ever been underestimated or even mocked for your career choice, only to be totally vindicated later on? I'd genuinely love to hear your experiences and thoughts in the comments below. What would you have done in my shoes? And if you found this story meaningful, if it made you think, please hit that like button and subscribe to the channel for more stories about integrity, comeuppance, and finding your strength. Share this with anyone who might need a reminder that doing the right thing, even when it's incredibly difficult, truly matters. Thank you for listening, and remember, your worth isn't determined by others' perceptions, but by your own actions and unwavering integrity.